Hello and welcome to the That's So Craven podcast, your one-stop shop for all things Fulham. We are back, and it's a slightly disappointing one today as we recap the 2-1 loss to Brighton at the Amex. A really disappointing result in a game where potentially it could have swung either way. A couple of moments of just lapses of concentration, and once again Fulham dropped points late in a game. Here to discuss it all, we have Mark. How are we going? Looking resplendent in yellow, Mark.
Hey, Jack. Yeah, hey guys. Hoping the yellow brings a little bit of cheer to this pod. Happy to be here. Going to go over it in detail as we always do. But yeah, a bit moody today. So we'll see. We'll see where the pod takes us.
You're hopefully the sunshine that we need in our lives today. And joining us for the first time as well, we have Luke from FPL Crusader. How are we going, Luke? Great to have you on board today.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Look, bittersweet. Happy to be here. Disappointed with the result. The power was out here in Brisbane on the weekend, so I've just watched it about half an hour ago. So I'm still coming down, I guess, from the shock. But I think we played well. But yeah, I guess onwards and upwards, I say.
Yeah, absolutely. And Luke, before we jump into actually reviewing the game, it'd be great if you can just let us know about your channel that you run as well, and what you get up to online, and maybe a little bit of background around your Fulham story. Obviously, I'm assuming by the accent you're a Kiwi, and ending yourself up in Brisbane as well. Give us a little bit of background into yourself.
All right, so I run a very small FPL, channel, just because none of my close friends like Premier League or Fantasy Premier League, so I decided just to regurgitate it in front of a camera. Also, for my corporate job, it helped me develop slides, so I thought, why not do it? So I've been doing that for about a year. It's not too bad. I'm very addicted to Fantasy Premier League as much as I am for Fulham. So I've been a Fulham fan for about 20 years, I guess, give or take. I used to be... So back in the day in New Zealand, we didn't get a lot of Premier League football. Pretty much we only got the highlights once a week. We got a lot of German football for some reason, but not much English Premier League. Back in the day, my dad was a Manchester United fan. He reckons he was a David Beckham fan. Realistically, he was a Posh Spice fan. He used to like watching the Wags in the stand. So naturally, I went against him and went for Manchester City back before they had all the money. But I've since changed. I didn't like them anymore. And I changed to Fulham because they reminded me a lot more of my hometown rugby team, the Canterbury Crusaders, hence the name, a rugby union team from Christchurch. So, I've been as I said, fan of them for like 20 years, and it was really cemented in, I think it was 2010. Wife and I went over did our Consiglio tour around the UK and Europe, and we stayed in Fulham for about 2 weeks. So, unfortunately, I didn't get to see a game, but I was hooked from then.
Yeah, love it. Good. It's always great to hear news stories about Fulham fans, especially overseas fans like yourself. So, no, look, really appreciate you reaching out through the Discord. So if anyone wants to jump on the Discord, we do have an FPL channel on there as well, which Luke's quite involved in. And yeah, definitely check out his channel. Really, really great content if you're into your FPL. So, like I said, really appreciate you joining today, Luke. So let's jump into this one and talk about the game itself. Look, Mark, I'll throw to you first. Coming into this Brighton game, obviously you never really know what you're going to get with Brighton. Fulham unbeaten in the Premier League against Brighton, but a lot of those results, I'd say, weren't comprehensive by any means. And this Brighton side are doing really well this year. You look at the victory for them pushes them right up the table into European contention. Going into this one, how are you feeling about the potential for a result here?
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. I mean, we've rode our luck a few times, right? There's a couple of 1-1s that we've had at the Amex Stadium before. The last time in the pouring rain, we have João Palhinha come off with a beautiful shot. I think that finished a tie. We had Manor Solomon the season before that have something like our only shot on goal, and he equalized there. So if we're being entirely fair, I think they were due the rub of the green this time round. Having said that, we have a heavily depleted squad, and I know that there's a couple of different opinions on whether this could have been dealt with better in January or whether we still have a good enough squad. But when we're out Kenny Tete, we're out 3 wingers, we're out Sasa Lukic. Okay, that's not an injury, but that's it's a huge accumulation of yellow cards. Probably part of which is because he had to be the sole CDM for the good first third of the season while Sander Berger was injured. And now we hear that Anthony Robinson is playing slightly crocked with injections and sort of other ways of working around it. So he's not at 100%. Between that and them playing at home and them, I actually didn't think the ref had a bad game. We can talk about the big decisions later on. And I know that there's been some uproar on social media about both Brighton's goals, but for what it's worth, I thought they were both relatively fair. But yeah, I mean, I think another key point that I want to throw to you guys as well, the five at the back, it seems to be when we're playing away against teams that we expect to dominate the ball. But has the experiment failed, or should we try and use it more selectively? What did you guys think about that?
You go for gold, Luke. I was going to ask you literally the same question. So Mark's done my job perfectly.
I don't like it at all. I don't think our five at the back worked. I think Castagne specifically towards the end got found out defensively. Also Diop, I think, wasn't playing his best. I think Bassi and Anderson complement each other so well. A back four just works. I understand Lukic wasn't there, so that changes the entire structure. We couldn't play out through the middle at all. Without one of the things I didn't like is that we kept doing the long crosses across the pitch. It became very obvious for Brighton. They were able to just shut it down quite a bit. I know we got a good goal from Jimenez off a quick break, but I think creativity was lacking a bit, and I think that's probably because of the back five. But we just weren't playing that well. I think Timmy's more of a Premier League, dare I say, a sub on rather than starting game at the moment. I think I just don't have a lot of faith in him. Matoma got around him a few times and made him look silly. That being said, I think we had to play the back five because of how our squad was set up. So, yeah.
Yeah, no, I agree with you there. I think the back five worked because it was kind of a surprise the first time we utilised it. It worked against Chelsea. They weren't expecting it. Now it feels like teams tactically go into the game, and they would have known as well. And the fact that Lukic is out, they'd go, Marco's probably going to play a back five here. And you're right, we just get exploited. We saw Pereira obviously trying to play in the 8, but pushing a little too high up the field, a little too often. Saw Smith Rowe dropping back into that slot a few times as well. And I think we were missing an outlet. Like you said, it was too obvious what was going to happen. It was all going to be long balls forward from Anderson to wingers. And look, Smith Rowe hasn't played on the wing very often this season. And so I don't think he's played on the wing at all, actually. So trying to utilise him as a winger when he's clearly not one, I would have much preferred us to play our regular formation and start Cess, who's been, I thought, quite impressive recently. I don't think we needed a five at the back. And it feels like almost a knee-jerk. Lukic is out, therefore we have to play five at the back. I don't think that's true. I think we've got players like Harrison Reed. If he'd played a full game, maybe it would have been a different story and we wouldn't be targeting him. Tom Kearney could have played. Josh King could have played. And admittedly, they're not eights, and they're not going to fill the gap for Lukic perfectly. But I think changing your whole system because one player is unavailable is actually quite unhealthy. It's not a good position for the club to be in if one player dictates the entire formation of your 11. So I agree. I'm not a fan of this five at the back. I think we need to move away from it. The experiment worked as a surprise at first, but since then it's kind of faltered. Let's talk about the sort of early exchanges. I think we actually look quite solid at the back. I think Bassi had a good game and is looking really composed on the ball at the moment. There was an early moment where we were playing the ball around the back line really comfortably, and Bassi looked really, really good with the ball at feet. But it's very clear that Robinson injury is causing a bit of an issue. You look at how incredible he was at the first half of the season, picking up all those assists. Luke, do you think the injury to Robinson is actually also hindering our ability to play out of defence? Because it was so often we'd play intricate little triangles down that left flank and that would be our way out almost every time.
Yeah, definitely. He was the form in his position from the Premier League at the start of the season, and there was talk of him going to Manchester City in the summer window. So that shows you how well he was playing. So, like you said though, I thought Bassey played really well. They press a lot, Brighton. We struggle with the press sometimes in our defensive four, but having Bassey's speed was really good at chasing down that press. Anderson, I've noticed over the last maybe 5 or 6 weeks, seems to have lost a step. So I think that his combination with Bassey is really good, considering Bassey can cover his for lack of legs, I'd say. But in terms of Robinson, yeah, can we rest him? Can we afford to rest him? I'm not sure. Like you said, Cess is playing well over the last couple of games. Just give him some minutes, put some minutes in his legs. I think he might have started if Lukic was there and we didn't have the Manchester game earlier. I think he might have started, but yeah, something needs to happen with Robinson. I think he needs a rest, or hopefully it's not surgery.
Yeah, well, I think the word in the Discord was that it's going to be surgery in the summer. So I don't know if it's something that you can rest between now and then. Hopefully he doesn't go on international duty and has the ability to actually rest up for a little period. But it's definitely hampering us big time. Mark, I guess let's jump forward a little bit to the Fulham goal. It's a bit of a quick break. I'd say at that point, Brighton were probably slightly on top. They'd had a couple of chances early doors, but it definitely, I'd say, was a fairly even game at that point. But a really good break from Iwobi. We don't see that often, that sort of direct running down the wing from Iwobi. He likes to hold the ball up and almost cut inside more often than that. But he runs from deep in our own half, puts a perfect ball onto Jimenez's chest, who takes a half-decent first touch but finishes really well, a really well-worked goal.
Yeah, very impressive from Iwobi. I like that he just went for it with that directness and that pace. And I know I harp on about it like a broken record, but he just burns his man, runs right past him, and then an inch perfect cross. So that goal is, yes, Raul has to finish it, and he does a good job finishing it, but that goal, I think, is 80%, if not more, done by Iwobi. I wish we saw more of that. It was kind of like the Iwobi of old. And just that style of play, I believe others in the Discord have reiterated, maybe this is what someone like Josh King brings, right? Or maybe this is what Cess brings. A bit more directness, a bit more confidence, pace, an eye for goal. Because sometimes we seem to slow ourselves down. We do really well in the transition up until the final third, and then we're out of ideas. Whereas I saw Brighton, when they were playing, they know exactly what to do in the final third. It may not always come off, but they have these really nice triangles or dinks that gets João Pedro into shooting positions. That happened later on, but I wish we had more ideas in the final third, and to mix it up and be creative. But going back to the goal, really well taken goal. Happy for Raul, but for all the not to be overly negative here, but for all the celebration that we had that it was his 10th goal of the season and he did well. I mean, we need to see more, right? I want to see more. I want us to have a 15-20 goal strike, a 20 goals a season striker. So if we're just happy to push on with Raul Muniz for another year because we can extend the contract, that is a worrying lack of ambition for me.
Yeah, Luke, would you agree with that? I think it's obviously something that's high up every supporter's list of important purchases in the summer. I guess are there players that you would identify as people that Fulham should be going after as well to sort of fill that gap?
Yeah, we could maybe get by with Jimenez and Muniz if we brought in an attacking winger who wants to score 15 goals. I think we need my left and right's bad. We need a right winger who wants to create for the striker, but also cut in and have a shot. In terms of what you said before, Mark, about the final third, that's when I'd really like to see Smith Rowe take charge. It seems to me kind of, I don't know, if he's playing the 10 role or he's been brought into the team from Arsenal to be that 10 behind the striker, I think he needs to take charge more. Maybe it's just not his personality on the pitch. He's definitely got the talent for it, but we need someone in there who, when we get to the final third, can say, right, this is what we're doing, like a halfback in rugby or vice versa. But yeah, look, I don't think we can afford a striker that can score 20 goals a season in the Premier League. I don't think we'll be able to spend that much money. or I don't think that the Cans will give us that much money. So maybe let's go for a winger. It'd be good if we could have like a Dinger or one of Brighton's wingers. That'd be good. They seem to have too many these days. Just take one off their hands.
Yeah, I mean, it's a shame that we did lose Reece Nelson at the time we did, because he was that direct running player at goal. The final product wasn't there, but you did feel like that could come. And it was like he was sort of working towards that, and you felt like once he gets into form, similar to Smith Rowe, and we'll talk about Smith Rowe a little more. But I feel like I agree with you. I'd love to see someone like Cess play a little bit more often, because he does have that directness, and we saw it, when he was at Fulham years ago. That ability and that sort of, it's an inbuilt want to just run at goal and score goals. And I think that's what we're missing at the moment from wingers. And I agree. I think you're right. We're going to struggle to find a 20-goal a season striker unless you pull out some diamond in the rough. But more likely that you'll be able to spend decent money on a decent winger who's going to get you 10 goals, maybe 10, 12 goals a season. And that is probably the difference that we're missing this year, I'd say, because you pick up those extra goals in a lot of these games. We've probably got an extra 10 points under our belt. Yeah. Mark, I'll throw to you. Smith Rowe and Skibby on the live stream here has mentioned Smith Rowe goes missing too often. I do agree with that in some sense, but do you think it's possibly a little harsh, seeing as he was playing on the left wing against Brighton, to judge him too much?
I mean, I'm of two minds about Smith Rowe recently. Yes, there is an adjustment period, but I think Skibby has finally got to me by reiterating how much better AP is than Smith Rowe. So I'm starting to get a little bit less patient now, and we know the talent is there, but for some reason the confidence isn't, and it should be. It should be when he's surrounded with Iwobi and Bassi, and unfortunately Reece isn't with us currently because he's injured. But he has his sort of squad around him, and I think Fulham is we're told it's a very welcoming club, and I believe that. And I think the manager really cares. And I think the people, the squad, and the backroom staff, there's a sense of unity and camaraderie, which is really, really cool. I just don't know if he puts too much pressure on himself or he overthinks or something like that. But we really need to be seeing more for the fee we paid, which is a fair bit for us, and we know the talent is there. I think that's a frustrating thing, because we know he can do more, right? As opposed to some of the other members of our squad who are nowhere near the starting lineup. If they can't perform, that's kind of expected. We didn't pay a big fee for them. They weren't brought in with such a high pedigree and a history of succeeding, right? So it's unfair to cast that expectation on them. But with Smith Rowe, maybe a bit more time, but needs to be doing better. Having said that, he did have a pretty good snapshot that was deflected away and won us a corner. But these moments, they're sort of just flashes, right? And we need to see consistent, consecutive performances for long spells, and I hope we get that. If not by the end of this year, early next season. Yeah,
no, I think that's very fair. Let's move on to the Brighton goal. Now, possibly a little controversial due to a block in the lead up, but realistically, Brighton have 3 men unmarked at the back post. It's an easy header for Van Hecker. All he has to do is put it on target. It is a good header, and it gets this beautiful swerve on it to take it into the corner. But, Luke, Fulham should be doing better there, yeah?
Absolutely. You don't want to have their tallest player unmarked from a corner. It's schoolboy stuff. That being said, the header he put was a beautiful header. It had its own arc. It would be on a highlight reel somewhere. I think Timmy Chestnuts was supposed to defend him, but he got caught up with another Brighton player. I can't remember who it was. But that being said, you should still have 2 people on him at least, I think.
Yeah. Bassi gets blocked by I can't remember. It might be Hinchelwood or something. And there was another block as well. They had quite an interesting set piece. They all lined up at that back post and basically all went and picked a man. And about 3 or 4 of them were there purely to block. And it kind of worked. They got away with it. Yeah. I saw on Twitter afterwards someone doing VAR, calls that VAR missed this week, and that was listed as one where they should have picked up Bassi blocking. or Bassi being blocked rather. I don't know if I agree with that. Luke, your thoughts? Should that be considered a foul?
Oh, I haven't had too much of a look at it, but no, not really. From a set piece, no. I mean, you should follow your man no matter what. A lot of the times when they get blocked, it's because they're not watching where the person they're defending is, and they just got their eyes on the ball. So I think that was just a mistake from Fulham, to be honest. We can't nitpick
Mark,
it too much, I don't think.
Yeah, so I mean, I'm with you on this, Jack. We've done the same block, right, from corners, like the NBA style block. So it's, you know, and trying to be fair, that's the game. Like I'm usually one that calls out the ref and say we you know we were hard done by, but this I see no problem with this goal. It's a block. He doesn't trip him or shove him or, you know, obviously openly impede him. He's just in the way. So that's what happens, and we need to be smarter there. And like Luke said, giving their tallest guy a free header, like, okay, it's a really well placed header, but he also had zero pressure on him to make that header. So no issue with it. Thought the officiating was fair. A well worked routine from them, and naive from us.
It's frustrating.
It is. It's frustrating, and it's just incredibly soft. And look, there's a lot of talk constantly this season about Europe and European ambitions, and I think one of the biggest takeaways from this season is you have to be smarter. Like I think our squad quality is good enough to challenge for Europe, and I think if we get into Europe, we'll be able to strengthen to a point where we'll really be able to challenge in Europe. But our game management, our just like ability to stay switched on for a full 90 minutes. It's those moments that are costing us at the moment, and that's why we're not quite ready yet. And I don't know what that comes down to, if it's a psychological thing or a coaching aspect. I know Marco's drilled it in multiple times in post-match interviews, saying, you know, we need to be better and we keep losing concentration. But it does seem to be happening over and over again, and it's the most frustrating thing about Fulham at the moment is, you know, we just let these opportunities slip past us. And I think it's happened maybe 3 or 4 times in the last couple of months where we go, you know, we're back in this European race. If we'd won yesterday, I think we'd be sitting in 5th or 6th.
Yeah.
And you look at it and you go, we're back in the race. And then you lose a game and you go, oh, shit, okay, we've let that slip through our fingers. And then all of a sudden we seem to pull it back again. And then it slips through our fingers again. Imagine if we hadn't had those moments where it slips away and we have these, you know, a 4-1 loss to Wolves that we never should have had in the first place, a slip up here that we never should have. Like, these are the moments that European clubs and teams that qualify for Europe don't have. And look, there are 2 in this game. We saw 2 stupid defensive slip-ups against West Ham that cost us points as well. Let's talk about the second half of this game. There wasn't... I'd say Brighton probably looked the better side. Fulham, you know, threatened occasionally, but... Luke, your thoughts on the second half? Obviously, we'll talk about the goal itself at that point when we get to it. But just in general, how did you think Fulham came out in the second half after conceding so late in the first?
Well, they looked a little bit deflated. One of the things that worries me about Fulham is we don't seem to have like a strong leader on the pitch. Our captain doesn't get any minutes. So who's leading us to victory? Who's leading us when we're 2 goals behind away? So that's one of the concerns I have moving forward. And you say if we want to fight for Europe and we want to do well in Europe, whichever competition it is, we need that leadership. So I think we were lacking that today. We looked a bit impotent in the middle of the field. There's no go forward for me. We did a lot of those lovely crosses, as I keep saying, but even the commentators when I was watching it were getting sick of it and saying that'll be picked out, and Brighton knew it was coming. So I think a strong leader would have kind of pulled them together. Also, one of the things I noticed is that Pereira and Smith Rowe have vastly different personalities. Pereira looks angry on the pitch compared to Emil. Emil walks around like he's just having a Sunday run, whereas Pereira he's got so much more passion. If we could combine his passion with Smith Rowe's skill, then I think he could be someone to lead us forward. But that's not that easy. I'm just worried about our leadership moving forward, especially as we get towards the end of the season. There's a saying that teams go on the beach. We're not going to get relegated. If we lose a couple more in a row, we're not really going to challenge for Europe. So where does that put us? Mid-table, and then the team kind of pitters away for the next few weeks. I really hope that doesn't happen, but we need some leadership on the pitch.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. And I'd say Fulham are a team who, across the last few seasons, do end up going on the beach. I think the last 2 seasons before this, we've hung at that like 39-point mark for such a long time and just couldn't quite click over to official safety because we sort of took our foot off the pedal a bit. And it feels like we've actually done that a couple of times this season. And Marco's managed to bring it back and go, no, guys, the season's not over yet. We've still got stuff to fight for. And then we do fight for it. And then it just flits away. And I think that's a very good call on the leadership side of things. And Mark, I'll throw to you. Obviously, Robinson's taken the armband the last couple of weeks. We've seen Leno with it before. We do have a player in Anderson who has captained Fulham and captained Palace as well. Do we feel like maybe it's time to, reassess our captaincy at Fulham, seeing as Tom Kenny is clearly the leader of the group, but you do need someone who's going to pull the players up on the field and really get things moving again. We don't currently have that with Robinson, who's a great bloke, a great player, but isn't that sort of commanding figure that you want from your captain. Do you think it's Anderson? Do you think there's other options out there?
Wow. Yeah, that's a great question. I mean, immediately I gravitate towards Anderson because as Iwobi said, he has a different vibe. He has more of that like gentlemanly vibe, and you can see him hopefully, other than the time he was up against his old teammate in Mateta, he's relatively good at keeping his cool, relatively composed. We do need someone vocal out there, and also that vocal person to G us up when we're a little bit behind, but also to refocus us, right? Guys, it's the last 4 minutes. We have to hold on, right? Watch your man, and to just give that reassurance and give that sort of that last bit of energy to get us over the line, which, recently we've been pretty good at. But that's a really good point. I don't see any natural leaders. I think our players are good and they're, in their own way, they do their job well, but I don't see anyone grabbing the game by the scruff of the neck and driving us forward and being really vocal about it. And it would be, even if we got that player in the summer transfer window, it'd be pretty bold of Marco to give them the captaincy, within the first few months of them joining. But I'd probably, as of now, give it to Anderson.
And I guess it sort of plays into FPL as well, Luke. It's one thing to have a player leading from the front in terms of performances to be a captain. You look at someone like I can't off the top of my head name all the captains in the Premier League, but it does often make sense where you've got your 30-goal striker and make him captain because he's doing it on the pitch for you and he's sort of leading by example. And I feel like Fulham don't have that kind of player in the team as well at the moment. You look at someone like a Smith Rowe who should be doing all the special things on the field and go, maybe you could chuck the armband on him and he leads by example by creating those moments of magic that inspires everyone around him. Similarly, I think maybe that's the idea behind Robinson, someone who's having the season of his life. Yeah. Maybe if you give him the armband, everyone goes, yeah, you know what? He's playing out of his skin at the moment. I'm going to do the same thing. Would you prefer someone on the pitch as the captain of Fulham to be leading from the front in that sense where they lead with their performances? Or do you think it comes back to what Mark said with Anderson where you're leading by, being vocal and being that presence on the field?
Probably Anderson for me. I think the players like Smith Rowe and Robinson, you kind of just want to let them do their thing without having the additional pressure of being a captain, especially Smith Rowe. I don't think he could handle being a captain as well as being a creative outlet. If you look at Liverpool's or Klopp's Liverpool, they had all these superstars, but their captain and the driving force was Jordan Henderson, who probably wouldn't have got into too many teams in the traditional top six, but he got them up the field and he made sure they were winning every game week because he was a true leader. Now we need someone like that. So Anderson is probably the best bet given this current squad. We've missed that passion and go forward from Pellegrini a lot more than we thought, than we probably realised that we would. It's not just about his tackles, it's about his personality as well. So I don't think that Robinson is the right idea, but if he wants to step up, you're never going to say no.
Mark, Skibby's question here, and well, not question, statement. Andreas, captain, say no more. Have you been swayed enough to agree with that yet?
I think that would take at least 5 to 6 more beers before I could even entertain that notion. So no, not in the top 3, maybe not even in the top 5. But nice from Skibby to throw AP's name in the hat for anything positive and wonderful and fuzzy.
Well, another good suggestion though from Skibby here is Sander Berger. Do you think maybe he's the sort of presence that you want? He's that sort of calm yet imposing presence in midfield, and his performances are at such a level at the moment that, you know, after the Man United game, I saw all the Man United fans going, geez, we should sign Sander Berger this summer because he looks so composed on the ball. He's exactly what we're missing in midfield. Is that an option?
Yeah, I mean, I'll jump on it. Yeah, I mean, it could work. Maybe I'm just being old school, but I want my captain to be vocal as well, right? And I think Berger is great at his job, right? And maybe he can grow into it as he gets a little bit older and maybe even more confident, and then he can get more vocal. And I guess you also want your captain, not in the way Bruno Fernandes does it, because that's just irritating to everyone, probably including the United fans. But you kind of want them to be a little bit in the ear of the ref, right? And to sort of sway them that way. And maybe you get 3 or 4 less yellow cards in a season. So a captain sort of has many hats that they have to wear simultaneously. But Berger is potentially one for the future to look out for.
Yeah, no, I think that's a good call from Skibby, actually. Let's jump forward to the goal. And look, some people might call this a controversial moment, but honestly, it's a penalty for me. I'll fly around the group quickly and just confirm your thoughts. Luke, penalty?
Yeah. Unfortunately, yes.
Yeah, and Mark, I feel we spoke about it beforehand, and you're pretty much on board.
Yeah. By the letter of the law, it's a penalty. We can argue whether it's soft. We can argue whether it's distasteful or whether he played for it, which I 100% believe he did. But that's the game these days. Strikers, especially De Bruyne, did it to us, right? When we were hoping for that 1-1 at the Etihad a few years ago. He dragged his foot. You missed the ball. You touch the player in the box. The player falls over. That's a penalty.
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't even call it a soft penalty. It's if I always think about penalties and look at it and go, if that happened to us, what would I want? And it's clear that Pedro jumps in front of Reed. Reed is too slow to react there, and it's actually in part the fact that Reed and I think Anderson are both almost too close to each other in that moment and aren't communicating. Reed takes a swing because he's not really sure what Anderson's going to do. And look, it's a penalty. Pedro gets in front of Reed. And I saw people going, yeah, but how can it be a penalty if you don't see him? That's not really how fouls work in football.
No.
And so, look, it's unlucky, definitely. I wouldn't call it soft. It's just unlucky and a little bit unfortunate. And it was a poor way to end the game. And as Skibby's jumped up in the live chat here saying as well, 1 minute over the added time for no reason. And I'm going to say again, Fulham have very poor game management. We should never allow teams to be attacking us that late in a game where 1-1, really good point for Fulham, get the ball down the other end, hold possession. We shouldn't be allowing Brighton to have these opportunities to punish us late in a game, and it happens constantly. There was a lot of mix-up at the back there as well. I rewatched it back earlier, and you see Cess sort of not really knowing where he's going and doesn't really pick up the man. Diop gets somehow nutmegged inside the box. You've got Reed and Anderson both going for the same ball, leading to giving away a foul. It's just... It's messy and
panic,
it seems
right?
to happen a lot. It is total panic. And Luke, I'll throw to you, Luke. Is that something that is consistently proving to be a problem for Fulham? Because I should have pulled up the stat and done some research beforehand, but I don't know how many points we've dropped late in games now, but it must be close to 10 points this season.
I think you're right. I think it is close to that. Look, they shouldn't get into our box. in injury time. Put it that way. Like Anderson should be controlling the defensive line and the midfielders in front of him and just controlling where the ball's going. We just looked panicked. I was on the edge of my seat. It was scary to watch. They could have scored at any given time. They could have had as many shots as they wanted. It was just lucky that they got the penalty. They got what they wanted, I guess, but it is what it is. But yeah, I just, like you said earlier, the game management, the leadership, that it's these types of actions that shows that that's what we're lacking. But yeah, hopefully moving forward, it won't be that bad. Hopefully that's the last amount of points we get from, or we lose from injury time.
The penalty itself is pretty well taken. Mark, after Leno's sort of heroics against Man United, were you expecting him to maybe pull something off again, or was it pretty doom and gloom at the time? I did rewatch the replay in slow motion, and he actually does get fingertips to it, and he doesn't go across with his higher arm, where most keepers would dive with both arms straight out. We've just lost Mark, so I might need to ask you, Luke. Actually, Mark's back. Do we feel like Leno maybe could have done a little better there, or is that harsh to say when it comes to penalties in general?
Well, I think statistically 80% of penalties are scored, right? And
so
I would argue
Leno's used up all his saves against Man United, you're saying?
That's how poor they were. But look, I think on balance, Brighton deserved it. They have 2 goals chalked off for offside. Was that our high line, or was it just a mistimed run? I would argue the latter. They seem to want it more. And I like you said, I was pretty doom and gloom because it's a penalty from the attacking team in the 95th minute at home. You know, the odds are not in your favor. I think it's unfair to blame Leno. He did the best he could. But yeah, I was pretty despondent once that call was made.
Yeah, no, I feel the same. I feel like as soon as that penalty was given, it was unfortunately game over, and that's rough when it's 1:30 in the morning as well to feel like that. But that's the joy of watching from Western Australia. A comment here from Steve: Silva's subs were poor. King and Goddo would have moved us up the pitch and pressure their defence. Silva settled for the draw with 20 minutes to go. Luke, I am sort of in agreement with Steve here. I really wanted to see Josh King, or maybe Goddo, but mainly Josh King come on. Instead, we brought on Harrison Reed at that time. Yeah. How did you feel about Silva's subs in this game?
Well, I think the commentators said, and quite rightly, they were hampered because of all the minutes they played against United for some of the subs. So I guess that's why they didn't come in earlier. But I would have loved to have seen some creativity come onto the field rather than, no offense, but Harrison Reed, who's just there to keep the ball in the middle of the pitch or not give away too many penalties. But unfortunately, this time he did. But I think that, it feels like we talk quite a bit about Marco's subs, so I don't think it's the best part of his game as a manager. So I don't think he did very well this time. Yeah,
Mark, your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, there's a good point I believe from Skibby earlier that Reedy got a lot of hate, and I think that's he gave away a penalty, right? And I think that's more bad luck than being a pretty poor player all round. Now, I don't think where we want to be at as a fan base and what we're aspiring towards that Harrison Reed is the player we're looking for. But I would repeat myself in that this is a failure of the January transfer window, and this is the cons being tight, right? Look at how exposed we are. We don't need 9 goalkeepers like Chelsea, but we only have 1. Now we only have 1 absolutely exhausted right back, and we have 1 left back, 1 proper left back who's playing through an injury. Once we lose either Berger or Lukic, we defensively look really weak where our spine should be. So, coming at Reedy for 1 mistake when he's been such a good servant to the club, I think is probably just a lot of emotions, losing a pretty tight game where we probably just about deserve the point. But we really got to be asking questions of what the Khan's ambitions are. And if they don't match Marco's ambitions, then we are, even if they spend money in the future, without a manager of Marco's caliber, which is, in my opinion, going to be the hardest thing to replace, we're going to be looking at mid-lower table mediocrity again.
Yeah, I think that's very fair. I think there's a few issues there that will need to be addressed, and look, I hope that in the summer we do see some movement, because I think we need to see some more players come in.
Yeah.
I think the squad needs a little bit of a freshen up. Not to say that there's not good players in the squad, and we've not made good signings over the last couple of seasons. We definitely have, but it feels like there's a fairly clear divide now between the first team and the squad players, and that gap has just widened over the last couple of years. Harrison Reed is very clearly a squad player. Tom Cairney as well, very clearly a squad player. These are great players who would do well at other Premier League clubs potentially as well, especially newly promoted sides. We saw it from Decordova Reed, for example, going off to Leicester, and he was definitely at the point in his Fulham career where he was purely a squad player. And I feel like we need a stronger bench. You look at the players that Brighton were able to bring off the bench, they made the difference, I'm going to say. Just by adding that creative spark, by adding that energy. Harrison Reed didn't really do a huge amount when he came off the bench. I agree with some of the comments that, he is definitely competent enough, but I think you need better than that if you want to take the next step in the Premier League. And we do need to have a bit of a refresh where, maybe even someone like Bernd Leno becomes a sub next season or a rotation keeper. But I'm looking at maybe in terms of where you need to really look at upgrading, you need to look at a goalkeeper, a right back to cover Castagna, another defensive midfield to cover the issue that we're having at the moment where one goes out and all of a sudden shit hits the fan. We're I'd say a little unlucky with our wingers at the moment. Obviously, Adama was unavailable as well. If he was available, that might have been a different game, and maybe Marco wouldn't have gone to 5 at the back. But the fact that we've lost Wilson, Nelson, Adama in recent times, it does obviously make us quite thin on the wings. So I wouldn't say that's a massive issue. But then a striker, we're really missing in a couple of key positions, some decent backup, and so I do think we need to make some changes in the summer. It's just about if that actually happens. Guys, sort of wrapping up the game itself, now that it's been, well, I think all of us have actually only very recently watched the game properly for the first time, but now that it has been a little bit of time to sit back and reflect on it, how are we feeling about this loss? Do we feel it's a fair result? Do you feel like it's something that might cause a few issues going forward in terms of us not quite getting over it quite yet? How are we feeling?
I don't know about over it. I think it's just football. That's what happens in football, unfortunately. I don't think we outplayed Brighton to the point where we could walk away saying we should have won that or we deserve to win more. I think they outplayed us in the second half, so they would probably feel like they deserve the win, especially for the Matoma and I think it was the Dingra goals that were disallowed. They were really good goals, unfortunately. So we got a little bit lucky there because, as Mark said before, it wasn't to do with our defense; it was their attack that was just a bit off the mark. So I think if we came away with a draw, that would have been enough. I think.
Yeah, I second that. Pretty much just what Luke said on repeat. But the best we could have hoped for, I think, the way we played was a draw. Now, to be fair, yes, both goals were offside. They weren't that threatening, I felt. Obviously, that seems a bit ridiculous given that they had 2 offside goals and they outscored us. But yeah, we did seem like we neutralized each other pretty well. But I'm just hopeful next season when we play these guys again, we have a little bit of the luck and we don't have that severely depleted squad, which, it's going to mean our subs are less effective off the bench, and we can get those like brilliant, beautiful passages of play with those short passes inside the box and kind of do what they're doing, because I think they are a really, really well-drilled team, quite an exciting team, done it on a budget as well. So that's want to give props to them. But let's see what the next match against them is like.
Are they still in the cup? Can we still play them? Oh, maybe we'll meet them definitely in Wembley then. How's that?
Yeah, well, it's a high possibility looking at the draw. I think they're probably likely to go through, and hopefully if we win as well. I think I saw a sort of simulation, and I believe that Brighton are fifth favourites to win the FA Cup from here, and we're basically equal third favourites, us and Palace. I think Forest might have jumped above us since then, but there's a high possibility that we do meet them in the next round. So, yeah, fingers crossed. I think we learn from this experience, and hopefully, when we do meet them in the semis, if we do meet them in the semis, or even the final potentially, we learn from some of these mistakes and potentially are able to fix them. Let's take a quick look at some of the stats from the game. Possession fairly even, 53 to 47 in favour of Brighton. Brighton with just 9 shots on goal, 4 on target. Fulham with just 6 on goal, 1 on target, which ended up being our goal. 514 passes to 441, 7 corners to Fulham with only 3 for Brighton. Fulham with 12 fouls compared to Brighton 6. That was kind of surprising to me. And there were a few soft ones, I thought. I agree with you, Mark. I think the referee actually did a fairly good job, but I would have liked to have seen it a little bit more even, I'd say. There were some soft fouls, and I actually was rewatching and saw the foul that Pereira gave away to give away the free kick, which they then scored from. I actually thought that was quite a soft one. It's a bit of a shoulder to shoulder coming together, and the Brighton player goes down hard, and unfortunately a free kick's given away, which they score from. But look, that's football at the end of the day. Quick look at the table. Fulham obviously not picking up points there. If we had won that game, we would have jumped into 7th place, actually 6th place, because Brighton wouldn't be up there and we'd be ahead of Villa on goal difference. Still in a very good position though, 42 points. A win will take us to 7th at this stage. Admittedly, there's Newcastle with games in hand, but Villa have actually played a game more than us, so we do have an opportunity to overtake Bournemouth, Newcastle and Villa when we play Spurs. Palace sitting 3 points behind us now. Brentford 4 points behind us. Spurs actually 6 points behind us, along with Man United also 6 points behind us. So there is actually still quite a decent gap down the table when you look at it. It does mean, though, in these upcoming games, we play Spurs and Arsenal. We really do need to be picking up some points in those games to maintain this position and potentially continue our challenge for Europe. I'd say if we lose against Spurs and Arsenal, Europe is probably a step too far at that point. But look, the table actually, I'd say, is sort of tending to our favour at the moment. It's still nice and tight up the top, where we're only 5 points away from 5th place still. So Europe definitely isn't off the cards, but we do need a bit of luck to go our way with 10 games to go. Guys, let's look slightly forward now. Obviously, this game will be previewed fully in our After Dark episode on Thursday. If you don't already listen to After Dark, make sure you tune in, 8 p.m. Thursdays GMT. It's always a great show because the boys are drinking beers at the time, so they have a lot more fun. Luke, I'll throw to you first on this one. Now, Spurs, obviously not the Spurs we've seen in the last couple of seasons, throwing games away, not picking up points. Ange has been found out a number of times this season. Fulham have found out Tottenham a number of times in the last couple of years as well. How do you see this one going? Do you think this is an opportunity for Fulham to come away with some points, especially playing at home against Spurs?
Absolutely. This should be 3 points in the bank. And I think if we're ever going to finish in the top 10 or above 10th, this is the season we need to do it with the way Spurs and United are going. That being said, if we play a back five like we did against Brighton, then Tottenham will score 3 or 4 in the first half, I think, given their pace out wide. But I think we should be able to win this. Yeah, there we go. If we keep 11 on the field, we should win. My concern is not having Lukic is banned for this game as well, isn't he?
Correct.
I believe.
Yeah.
So that'll be a concern. We need to contain Maddison if he plays, and also Sarr's playing very well as well for Spurs. So he likes to control the midfield. That'll be an issue for Marco to think about. We'll see. It'll be interesting to see if he lines up the same way. But I think we need to go into it thinking we're going to get the 3 points. We should be able to score. Their defense is shocking. So I think Jimenez looked like a 20-year-old when he scored that goal, to be fair, which gives me hope. I'm in my 40s, but if he can look 15 years younger, then maybe I can if I go for a run. So that's good. If he can play like that against the Spurs defense, then I think he'll get another goal. So hopefully we can bang some balls into him, and then he can jump on the end of it. We just need to do it more often. We need more opportunities.
Yeah, and look, I'm hoping we also have Adama potentially back for that game,
Yeah.
because I think he will cause a lot of issues for the Spurs
Yeah.
defense, but also just allow us to play in a formation we're more comfortable playing in. Mark, your thoughts coming into Spurs? Would you like to see some changes to the 11? How do you think we're going to fare?
Yeah, I hope we could move back to four at the back as well and get Adama back in. Like Luke mentioned, they do have pace. Brennan Johnson, very, very fast. Kulusevski is another amazing, talented player. So whoever's tasked of handling him is going to have a tough time on their hands. But yeah, shutting down Madison. We've done it before, but we had Lukic then, and we got him really frustrated and more focused on complaining to the referee than playing football. So that was very enjoyable to watch last time at Craven Cottage. I do think they have quite a few people coming back from injury, though. I think Vicario's back. I don't know if Van de Ven is back, possibly, but take advantage of the weakened defense and just try to be a lot more solid at the back and be more streetwise. Luckily, it seems Son isn't having a particularly good season, so let's hope that holds for one more game. But I think they're going to be a tough test. Like, they have the quality, they've just been inconsistent. Now, the last thing to touch on, which you mentioned, Jack, is Ange has been found out, and we know Marco studies teams in depth, so we need to really be disciplined and drilled in how we attack Tottenham. But given their injuries and given Ange's, similar to Marco, just sheer determination to play one way, we should exploit that 100%.
Yeah, I think it's a really good point as well that Marco does seem to have Ange's number a little bit. We've seen that whenever Fulham come out, even if we're not getting the result, we do manage to actually outplay them and look better than them whenever we play Spurs at the moment. So I agree. I'm hopeful that Marco can continue that. I think it will need him to probably take a risk though and move away from five at the back, which obviously he feels most comfortable doing when we're without Lukic. But I just feel like if we go with that five at the back, we're going to be shooting ourselves in the foot a little bit, because this is an opportunity to take points off Spurs and walk away with a result.
We need to attack, like
five at the back to me.
Five at the back to me seems passive. I know it's supposed to be more attacking because you got essentially four wingers or more out wide, but we don't play that way. We play far too passive. So hopefully we can just attack.
Yeah, I 100% agree with that. I think we do look passive. We control the ball very well across our back line when we've got five at the back, but in terms of moving the ball forward, which is what you need to do to beat Spurs, it's lackluster. And so I agree. I'd like to see us go back to our regular formation and do things the way we know how to do very well. So let's hope that we do see some changes. I think... Yeah, I'll ask you guys for predictions. I'm going to go first, though, just to set the scene. I'm going to go with a 1-1 draw for this game. I have just this bad feeling we're not going to be able to quite get it done. Yeah, Luke, I'll throw to you.
2-2. I think they'll score and we'll get a late equaliser. I think they'll score too early and then we'll come back.
Mark, prediction?
Yeah, 1-1 seems fair. We just don't like clean sheets, and that really bothers me. And yeah, sometimes it's a deflection, sometimes it's bad luck, but it just seems impossible for us to, even when we win, we just don't like clean sheets. So
yeah, I think we've set up the After Dark crew with some pretty dire raw predictions. So hopefully we'll get them on the beers and they can start to spruik 4-0 wins and all that jazz. So. But look, I agree. I think this one's going to be a pretty tough game. I think it's going to be even. I'd say if we had Lukic back, I'd be a little bit more confident. And if we had some confirmation on maybe some of the other injuries around the squad that potentially I'd be a little bit more confident. Steve Reynolds on the live stream going with 2-0 you gloom mongers, and Skibby with a 5-0. He can
5-0.
back that one up on After
Wow.
Dark later this week. Guys, I think we can wrap it up there. Before we do, as always, I'll plug the Discord. Please do join up. You can find the links in all of our bios. It's a really great place to talk all things Fulham. It's great to have people like Luke in there with his FPL stuff, but also guys like Cottage Tactico, Fulham Fan News, giving us some really good inside news and inside scoops, and just a really good community of like-minded Fulham fans talking all things Fulham all the time. It's a great place to be, and a really good place if you want up-to-date news and you don't want to see all the weird stuff on Twitter as well. Luke, before we finish, if you just wanted to give your channel a plug and give what you do a bit of a plug again.
Yeah, FPL Crusader. So follow me on all the socials. I've shared this on the X. I still call it Twitter. And I'll share it on Blue Sky as well. So I just do a couple of pods a week. One's a game week preview. I'm doing one on transfers. There's what we call a blank game week this week. There's a few teams not playing, Liverpool and Newcastle. So those of you who have the likes of Salah and Isaac, you'll either need to do a free hit, which is a one game week transfer, or you'll need to plan for it. So tune in to my videos. I don't do live streams because I work a 9-to-5 job and I'll get fired if I do a live stream. So, but just tune into the YouTube and I'll share it, and then hopefully we can all succeed together.
100%. No, I've watched a bunch of the videos. It's really great content, and interestingly, I was doing incredibly well in FPL, and then I stopped watching the videos, and it absolutely died off a hill. So I'm back to try and salvage it, seeing as I'm now a couple of points behind first place in a couple of my leagues. So a lot of work to do to fix it up now. Guys, a huge thank you firstly to you, Luke, for joining tonight. Really appreciate your time, and hopefully we'll get you on again in the future.
Yeah, it's been really fun. I'm happy to join, and thank you for having me. It's a really good pod, so we'll try and share it to everyone. I'll mention it on my videos this week. Try and get more people, even non-Fulham fans, watching.
I really appreciate that, mate. And Mark, thank you as always for joining, mate.
Always a pleasure to be here. Share the Fulham joy, and come on, you Whites.
Share the Fulham joy, more like share the Fulham pain at the moment. But as we always say, this is a therapeutic process. It's a healing process. We do this to feel better about ourselves, and I feel like I've managed to purge some of those demons today. Let's see if we can move forward and enjoy the game against Spurs and get a good result. So a huge thank you again to everyone who's joined us on the live stream. We really appreciate the interaction and the comments that come through. A big thanks to everyone who continues to subscribe to the podcast. Please do share it with your other Fulham friends, share it around your communities. We really appreciate the support from everyone. Mary's not here today, but I will pull one off for you. Actually, no, I can't do that. Mark, maybe you can give us a you Whites, and then I can wrap it up in my usual way.
You Whites!
Yeah, I love it. Not as good as Mary, but I still love it. Thank you again, and as always, come on, you Whites.